to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right. Thank you so much for joining us for another conversation that is deeply meaningful and helpful the way we navigate life. Why do we get together as the Goldilocks community on a regular basis to have these conversations and truly engage in a dialogue? The entire purpose is to get it just right. Get it just right so that we can navigate life and we can make our business, our home, and our community a better, safer, and joy-filled place. Keeping that theme of Goldilocks and getting it just right. Today, what we're going to try and get just right is understanding and embracing risk mitigation so that our lives don't fall into peril because we made short-term decisions that we thought were beneficial, but in the long run ended up harming us. Insurance is such an integral part of our financial portfolio because it's not just saving. How do we protect what we have saved? How do we protect what we have invested? Because if what I have invested is put at risk, then all the investment and saving I made is gone. Would you build a house and leave it open? No, you're going to put a lock at the gate. You're going to put a lock on the front door. And you're truly going to protect what is inside your house. When you buy a car, are you going to leave it outside and park it and go away for a 2-week vacation and leave a key inside? No, you're not. So why would you do that with bigger assets? Think about that as we start this conversation. And I am super excited to have Melissa Gallego from RFNG Insurance from the Caribbean region, specifically from the country of Belize, to have this conversation about why is it a smart move to truly look at insurance as a way of risk mitigation. Melissa, welcome to the conversation.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me.
It is such a pleasure. So let's take a step back and talk about what got you started in insurance and what does it feel to be in this field, because you're providing a service most people don't even understand or know they need.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, I started in this industry about 35 years ago. It wasn't my chosen field in the beginning. I actually stumbled upon it. I didn't even know what insurance was about. But when I did start working with the insurance industry, I realized that there was a need to educate those people that everything that you do requires taking a risk. And that is a financial risk for you. And so as I continue to learn more about insurance and understanding what it is, I saw the need to continue to educate others, because if you don't understand it, then you won't buy into it.
And that is such an important point you make, right? Because this is not a profession people learn about in class. You're not educated in it to get into the field, and you're not educated in it to actually understand and plan for it as you start your career. Right. So I love the fact that you look at it through the lens of education, because educated consumers make better choices. Uneducated consumers just do whatever they know because they don't know any better.
Right.
So as you sit in your underwriting experience hat and your leadership hat, not just for your organization, but for the industry and the region, what are some of the risks you see that people need to start thinking about, that they are really not thinking about?
Well, particularly, we just had a hurricane pass through Belize. And we find that where people do insure, they do not insure for their full value of their homes. And so whenever there is a loss, a catastrophe, for example, then average is applied or depreciation is applied, and then people don't understand why. If I insure my home for 100,000 and I have a loss, why am I getting less? So the whole thing about deductibles, insuring for the proper value is then taken into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
So we're seeing in across the industry where people, especially when they have a mortgage, they want to insure the property for just the value of the loan. But then if you have a $200,000 home and you're just borrowing maybe 100,000 to do renovations, you cannot insure for 100,000 because already you are insuring for 50%. You're paying premiums of 50%, and so when there is a loss, you start at 50%. So if your roof goes in a hurricane and you're looking at a $50,000 loss, automatically you're starting at 25,000. And so you see, you're not protecting your investment wisely.
Mm-hmm. And so that is a knowledge gap. People don't realize that insurance is not just so that if something happens to the house, mortgage is paid, but home is the single largest investment we're all going to make in our lifetime.
Right.
So if it's the single largest investment, and even if I built my home piece by piece by piece as I saved, shouldn't I be protecting it? And I've heard people say, you know what, Belize has had so many hurricanes, the Caribbean region has had so many hurricanes. Chances are rarely it's going to touch us.
Yeah.
Fair point. But then I always ask them, okay, if there is a low probability of it happening, but it happens often in your region, and when it happens, the outcome is catastrophic, do you want that?
And we do, I mean, the insurance industry does take the responsibility of educating our customers when they incept the policy. And at that time, because there's no loss, that person says, yes, I understand, but my pocket, this is all I can afford. And so when you're getting into the investment, that's when you need to plan ahead. Okay, I am going to be getting my home. This is one of the biggest investments I'll ever make in my life. And so I don't plan just for building the house, but I also have to plan for insuring it. And insurance is not 100%. You have to take a portion, which is called the deductible. So if your home is 200,000, and most private homes, the deductible for catastrophic losses is 2% of that value, then you need to make sure that you put aside that amount of money so that you can access that. So that when you have a big loss, you are not out of pocket by a lot.
Mm-hmm. And you bring up a brilliant point, Melissa. Just like any other investment we make, right? When guys buy cars, they're very happy to put a bunch of money aside to put all of those bells and whistles and spruce them up, right? Because they don't want to drive a car just like it came out of the purchase place. They have to upgrade it. They save money for that. They put money aside for maintenance because car is a toy.
Right.
But why not do it for the home? Because that's where your family is.
Right.
And so the planning and thinking through is such a critical piece. And I would say, in addition to all of the insurance pieces, they also need to put money aside for repair and maintenance. Because if we don't repair and maintain, then we have neglected upkeep of the property, which then will have a down effect in the event of something happening and insurance steps in, right? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, like policy conditions do say that you must maintain the property in good condition. So in this year, we've seen inflation about 30% because of all that is happening in the world. And so the construction cost has gone up. And so if you've not done anything to your property, automatically to replace it, it would be, so you say 5 years ago you built your home for 100,000, you would now have to build that for maybe 130,000. But we need to make sure that throughout the time you are maintaining, because when you build your home, you don't just leave it there, because you have to make sure that you check the roof every so often. You have to make sure that you paint. You have to make sure that you just check everything, because if you don't, it will deteriorate. And then you're expecting that, okay, I have a value here, but I did not maintain it. And so when I have a loss, I'm expecting to be paid based on what I had, but actually the value is not there anymore. So you
Mhm.
need to maintain and upkeep. And the policy conditions requires that. If you don't do that, then again, when there is a loss, that is taken into consideration when settlement is done. And again, people get disappointed at the point in time. But the conversation was had at the inception of the policy. But of course, a lot of times people don't remember that.
Yes, because it's too much to remember and too many things to worry about, right? And the other thing I have been a homeowner now, God, I've lived in the United States and Belize between them 28, 29 years. And throughout my ownership in home ownership in the West, some of the things I personally have been concerned about and made sure I invested in is not just the house and the upkeep of the house, the entire property. Maintain a clean environment, a nice garden that is usable, habitable, trash nowhere around so that I am not inviting rodents. I don't create environments where ants and termites will come. Make sure it's sprayed every 3 months or every 6 months, and make sure the entire environment is clean, because what happens in the environment directly affects the home, because the home is sitting in the environment. Can you educate our audience a little bit about the importance of that in not only preserving the value of the house, but also mitigating future risk?
Well, you are supposed to act like you have no insurance policy. So, whenever there is a hurricane threatening, for example, you need to make sure that you board up your windows, take your vehicle, if you have a vehicle that is insured for comprehensive hurricane, take it to higher ground. Because if you leave it there and then it gets damaged, yes, insurance will pay, but you may not get back what you are expecting. And so there is a loss there, as well as you may be out of pocket because you are not properly insured. But it just goes not just protecting your investment, but also being a good corporate citizen. You know, being a part of a community that takes pride in making sure that, you know, your little area is well kept, your grass is cut, you know, your house is looking good. I know these things take money, but if you plan properly, they can be done.
Yes. I mean, we take time to groom ourselves, right? That's the example I give. We don't let our hair go crazy and don't wash our hair because soap costs money, a haircut costs money. We maintain ourselves,
Yeah,
right?
right,
So the same way we need to maintain our home.
right.
And if we have a business, let's pivot to a business. When we have a business, a lot of times people are like, what can I do in a way that I have the opportunity to make money, but I don't want to pay much taxes? But if anything happens, I want everything covered, right? That's the mentality. What advice would you give entrepreneurs starting out and entrepreneurs who are already out there in terms of thinking about business risk and mitigation of the business risk? Because not all risks you can cover by buying insurance. Certain risks you have to cover by actually doing prudent business practices.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as a business, you do have to do the risk management factor, where you look at what your business is, and then you look at anything that will cause damage or loss to your business. And so then you look at it and you differentiate what would be a severe, what would be mild, and what would be something that you can transfer to the insurance company. And so you either avoid the risk or you transfer it. But you need to look at each aspect of your business and grade it to say, okay, this I can avoid this risk by doing X, Y, and Z. So for example, if you're a company that is selling electronics, and you know those are very easily stolen, so you make sure to mitigate that loss. You have in your alarm systems, you make sure that you have your burglar windows, your burglar doors, and that is not to say that you still won't have a loss, but it minimizes the amount of loss that you have. And so all of these things have to be taken into consideration. And then if you are if you're a business and you look and you say, okay, this is going to be something that is going to be severe but not frequent, again, you have to put that into your plan. So it's just looking at the different severity of the loss and planning for it. If you don't plan for it, you will be very badly surprised when you do have a loss.
Mhm. And that is an excellent point, because people plan for business in terms of what am I going to sell, how much money I'm going to make, and who I'm going to sell to, right? They keep that sales and marketing plan going, but they don't invest too much time on the risk mitigation and governance strategies that truly allows you to be rooted firmly on solid ground, so that as your business takes off, you're free to fly because you've taken care of all your housekeeping.
Right.
Right?
And
To
for
me, this
example,
is
if you're
also.
a hotel and you have to also make sure that you take care of the consequential loss. So if there is a fire, not it doesn't have to be a hurricane, but anything that renders your business that cannot be operating because of this loss, then there is a loss of income. So you need to also make sure you plan for that, and you can transfer that risk to an insurance company. And so whenever that period that you have to be repairing and renovating to put yourself back into operational activity, you are getting that money from the insurance company, and so there's not loss. You can keep your employees. It also helps the community because things continue. There's no stop because your money is being insured. Your consequential loss is being insured.
Mhm. So elaborate on that, Melissa, because a lot of people don't understand, if it's not real property, what does this mean? How do I think about it? Because there's workman's comp, there is all kinds of other liabilities, because we've only talked about property, right?
Right.
So what are the other things that business owners need to think about, and why that is important as part of a big picture strategy and as a business owner? That is critical.
Right, yeah. And to elaborate on what I was saying, that's called business interruption insurance. So if your business is interrupted as a result of an insured peril, so fire, hurricane, 'cause you do have to have the property insured in order to get this cover. And so the property is insured for fire, hurricane, any kind of catastrophe, and any loss as a result of those, and the business is rendered unfit to operate, you can say, okay, I'm taking all my major expenses. So I have wages, I have to pay my mortgage, different operating costs. And you say, okay, it will take me maybe 6 months to get back on my foot. So I will take those costs and I will insure that. And so when that period that you're down, you are getting back that money from the insurance company. And so you're not at a loss, a complete loss.
Now, this is a interesting conversation, especially as we are coming out of just over 2 years of the pandemic. So does the business interruption insurance become something people can use during situations like the pandemic? Because it's not an environmental disaster, but it is an environment caused scenario that people can't operate.
Well, the policy does exclude any communicable disease, so that would not be a cover for insurance policy.
So in most countries, when this was covered, that's why the governments covered it, because insurance
Right,
doesn't cover it.
right,
So this is where the government in the Caribbean has a responsibility
that's
to
right.
figure out the best way to be that partner to both business and homeowners, and be that third rail to make sure holistically that environment is sustainable regardless of what happens, because somebody has to cover somebody at all times, right? Because when the government doesn't have money, they increase taxes and households have to pay.
Yes.
So if the households are taking care of the funding of the government and businesses are taking care of the funding of the government, then how is the government stepping in to truly fund both the business and the households when things are out of control and these folks can't control the situation? So that is an important reminder, but a conversation for a different audience.
Yes, but you make a good point because as good citizens we should be paying our taxes, and a lot of time we try to avoid it, and then we expect government to step in and help with these things. But if we're not paying our proper taxes, then where will the money come from?
Yes.
Good point.
Yes. So if our roads are better because we pay taxes, our cars will ride better,
Yeah,
and maybe there'll be drainages, therefore less flooding. All of this has a domino effect.
right.
So how do we help have this conversation, Melissa, as a community of businesses, insurance, citizens, business owners, and elected officials? Because everybody wants what they want without having to do anything, right? People will tell you, I pay taxes, but look at that. The government officials are only fixing their roads and the drainage is down their street.
Yeah, that
Right?
one is out of your control. That happens too.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
But I
So
think just continuous conversations like these to make sure whenever you can and whenever you interact with someone, you try to have that conversation, bearing in mind that not always people will want to be receptive to what you're saying, but we do have webinars. I mean, the Association of Insurance Institutes of the Caribbean, we have we have several webinars, and we also have courses, insurance courses that we offer throughout the Caribbean. And so, for those who want to learn more about insurance, they can take the classes. But it's just through education and continuous communication with the public that we can get people to where they need to be. Because having the knowledge, they say knowledge is power, but having the knowledge, then you can make better decisions.
certainly, certainly. So we've talked about home ownership, we've talked about business ownership. What about other types of insurance? When I get sick and I can't go to work, I get in an accident and I'm immobile for a while. So accidental dismemberment, or the main breadwinner dies, and life insurance, or I am the breadwinner, I have a mortgage. If anything happens to me, I don't want my family and out on the street, so I get life insurance to cover the rest of the mortgage. How do I think through these? Because those are also things people don't think about, and young people don't think about it. They think they're invincible.
Yeah. Well, that is under the life insurance. I do general, but I can still put in my little 2 cents. But the younger you are, is the better time to buy a life insurance policy because once you lock into that premium, it's a lifetime. So, but that's the same time that people are just starting out, you're just getting your first job. And so there's no money for that, or at least that's what people like to say. But we have to start thinking more smartly and looking ahead, planning ahead. Not saying, okay, I can't afford it now, because those same young people that are saying that I can't afford it now, but you see them buying these expensive bags and shoes and all of that. So it's just to put the priority in place rather than saying, okay, because I might buy this expensive bag because it makes me look good, but in what 2 3 years I won't have that bag. But if I can buy a policy that will protect me, for the long haul, and I'm young, so I get better premiums,
Yes.
and then my future is secure. But it's again having the conversation, because you have a lot of the sales people from the life, like the sales intermediaries, and they do go out and try to speak to people to sell them. And what they do, they sit with you and they go through your entire financials, not just, okay, I'm selling you this policy, but they sit with you, find out what it is that you're looking for, what it is that your plan for the future, and then what is your budget, what is your expenses, what is your income, and then they will advise you as what is the best plan to buy. But
Mhm.
you need to have the conversation. Some people will say, no, I'm not ready for that. But you need to have that conversation as soon as you are able to be financially independent.
Mhm. And it really is not that much of money if you start thinking about how many times a week do you go out and have drinks with friends?
Yes.
How many drinks do you have and how much does it cost? I always chuckle when I hear young people say, even young parents say, I don't have money for that. Well, you're out in a bar drinking at least 2 or 3 drinks twice a week. That's over $100
Yeah.
every time, right? So I see your pictures on Facebook. I see you having a fun time. I'm not saying don't have a fun time, but can you have that drinking habit and invest in your life, kind of, right? So the day you can't go to work or the day something happens, then everybody else is taken care of. And it's truly a mindset conversation and planning ahead, thinking through. So I am so appreciative that you were willing to go there to have that personal type of conversation, even though you predominantly play in the space of general insurance. Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
So if you think of giving 3 tips to people in terms of understanding risk, mitigating risk, and buying the insurance for the right risk, what would those 3 tips be?
You need to first understand the investment. It is not a small investment, especially if it's a home. So you look at the investment and then you look to plan ahead to see how you can put that within your budget. Because if you don't do that, then you will be in a position where you say, I cannot afford that. And sometimes we get people saying, oh, I would just save that premium in the bank. But when you buy an insurance policy, the minute you walk in, you can walk right and you walk out and you go home and there is a fire, you can turn right back and come back into the insurance company and make that claim. It is that instant. When you're saving up your money in the bank, and if you're just putting, maybe even you're saying I'm putting $1,000, but the loss is 20,000, where will you get that money from? So understand the investment, plan for anything that is a part. So you transfer that risk to the insurance company, and then you look at what your portion would be, which would be your deductibles, and you plan for that. And so when you do have a major loss, even though your deductible is say $5,000, you pay the first $5,000, you may already have that planned. So it will be an easier activity to do, because when you have your whole roof off and everything in your house is wet from this storm, you know, it's not a good place to be. And then you don't want to hear the insurance company saying, oh, but you will have to pay the first $5,000. If you have planned ahead, it will be easier for you, it will be less painful. So know your investment, know what your policy condition says, and plan for what you are responsible for.
And I love that sequencing of the 3 tips, Melissa, because we just had a hurricane pass. I am up in the mountains, not at the coast, but I heard in my neighborhood roofs moving because not everybody secure their roof.
Right.
And the whole night I kept telling my husband, oh my Lord, if the roof flies off and if everything gets wet, you and I are not going to have anything to wear. So we immediately put an emergency clothing bag and then put it in the washing machine.
Oh, that's
Because it is going to be safe there, right? So my husband is laughing at me. He's like, when do you ever stop worrying about things? I'm like, no. Once I risk mitigate, I can go to sleep, right?
exactly. Yeah.
So I bring this up as a tongue-in-cheek family conversation, but how are we planning? And then as soon as the hurricane passed and people could drive and get about,
They forget.
we were flooded. I immediately called my construction people to take a look at the roof. I immediately called my solar maintenance people to come and look at the solar panels and make sure it's secure. And we also got it cleaned, right? So now we can use the solar energy. The house is secure, the roof is secure, and we maintain our house every year. We walk around and make sure things that needs to get fixed, gets fixed, house is painted, everything is tight. And then we make sure that everything is sprayed and protected every 3 months. So we have that on a schedule, we budget for it. And my neighbors look at it and they're like, why do you have to do that? And so it becomes a conversation starter in the neighborhood.
Right. Yeah, people don't understand that you need to protect your assets. They feel if I buy an insurance policy, I don't understand the adequacy, but I have a policy. And so that is enough. And that is not enough. You need to protect, you need to upkeep. You need to know, and so that was a good thing that you did, because The same thing happened to me after the hurricane passed. I took a walk around my home and I said, oh, good, I didn't get any damage. And then when I called my contractor, he said, yes, you did get some roof damage. So you need to make sure you check. You can't take things for granted. So I like the approach that you've used. And by sharing that with others, maybe it opens their eyes to say, okay, I didn't think about that. So again, sharing knowledge,
Yeah.
communicating, educating, that's important.
So even for the carport, I didn't want to put a tin roof. I built an arbor because I want to grow cerasee and cucumber. That way every space is used to make food, right? So because I'm all about the food. But I put hurricane straps for all the pillars.
Right.
People are like, why do you have to do that? It's just for the car. Well, it is just for the car, but if a hurricane moves through, that pole is going to come right through my house.
Yes.
It might go through your house. You don't want my poles coming through your house, right? So it's not just protecting us, protecting each other. And then we start having a conversation as a community. How do we protect our neighborhood? Because if one person is doing and the others are not, then that neighborhood is really not safe. We're only as safe as the least protected one in the neighborhood.
Right. Yeah, if everybody's doing it, then it becomes something that is bigger and better for not just one person, but for the entire community. And if everybody's doing it in different communities, then for the country. So,
Mhm.
but it's something
Beautiful.
you just have to do one thing at a time, one person at a
Yeah.
time.
One person at a time. Yes, it is. It is almost like helping somebody grow up into looking at their life and their life circumstances with a different mindset. It's a mindset change.
It is a mindset change because, you know, as parents, when we're teaching our children, we don't talk about these things with them. We try to teach them everything else, but we do need to start. I'm talking about the financial skills in order to protect yourself, in order to be a good citizen of your own country. And so, if we start talking about these things, maybe in the schools,
Mhm.
because financial risk is there in everything that you do, in everything. Right? And so a lot of times people don't understand how to do it because they've never heard about it. So when we start to do these things in the schools, and we did have a time where the insurance industry was going into the high schools to talk about insurance, and some of the children there were saying, "Wow, we didn't even know this," and but we know that my house is insured with your company or my car is insured with your company. Can we hear about it? We see the ads on the TV, but by talking to the students, then they go back to their parents. And then we're making sure we're building a better society. So educating, we always go back to educating.
Absolutely. And children are the key because parents may not be open-minded, but children can go and influence the parents. I'm with you 100% on that. We
Yeah.
change society by educating children and children going and educating parents.
Yeah.
The community that I've seen this do perfectly well is the US fire community, public safety community, the fire and emergency EMS, emergency management, the health people. So the ambulance and fire engine folks, they do it well. They're in every school every year to educate the kids. And so the kids going tell home, hey, do you have a fire alarm? Do you have a smoke detector? Because people don't realize that small investment can protect your home from getting fire.
Yeah.
I have a smoke detector. I have 3 buildings in my property, the home, the office, and then I have an outside kitchen because I didn't want the kitchen inside the house.
Okay.
As we are getting older and, dementia, Alzheimer's, all kinds of things that can happen. And the first thing that happens is people put stuff on the stove and forget it's there. So as we are getting older, I wanted to make sure I had an outside kitchen. So in every one of those buildings, I have a fire extinguisher and a smoke alarm detector. And when I call the guys to install it for me because I'm not tall enough to climb to put the smoke detectors, they're like, why do you need this? And then it was an opportunity for me to educate. Oh, yes. So I'm like, you know what? Even if you don't have the time to protect the house, you can protect all the lives, get everybody out of the house, right? So think about the meaning of all of this. And then they're like, Where did you buy these fire extinguishers? We didn't know we could buy them here. So it's what people see and what people engage in. Slowly, we can have this communication. And when children come to play in my garden, because it looks nice and comfy for them to play, and they obviously come into the kitchen because there's food there, and they see the fire extinguisher and they're like, what is this? Fire extinguisher. Can we play with it? No. Right? And then there starts a conversation, and then they go tell their parents.
Right.
So there's so many ways to prevent and mitigate the risk, and insurance becomes an add-on, the final layer of safety.
And it's good because it creates, when one person starts doing that, it creates the opportunity for dialogue. And then, it's a spin-off. Somebody else will be interested. Oh, because just by you sharing that, I didn't think about it like that for the fire extinguishers and having an outside kitchen. It's a standard to just have the kitchen inside the home. So that's a good idea. So one good idea can be shared, and you can change people's perspective.
Yes. And for me to build that kitchen, I had to draw plans. I had to go to the town board, talk to everybody. There were at least 25 people who were part of this process for me to get that done and inspected and certified, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's like, nobody does this. I'm like, I know, but my husband is a cancer patient. I am older than I look. We're in our last stages of life. Don't look at what I look like, right? And my husband is knocking at the entry of dementia. I want him to have a happy life. I don't want him to stress out about what I might do wrong. So why not remove the propensity for something happening completely outside of the house? It's like child-proofing the house. We're old-proofing the house, right?
But that's what it's all about, mitigating losses, and protecting your asset, protecting life, and having that peace of mind, so it's important. Yeah.
Yes. So I don't have to get mad at him because he burnt something down. It is also peace for the house.
Right.
So with that tongue-in-cheek conversation, I would love to open this up for a conversation with our live audience. We have Robin and Alyssa from the United States. And who knows, someday they might be thinking of opening up a business that has property and other insurance requirements, or they might invest in a Caribbean home or a property. So go ahead, ladies. What's coming up for you?
Oh, I'd love it if I had a home in the Caribbean. That would be great. In the meanwhile, I'll just have to come and visit you, Cass.
Yes.
I've always been a buyer of and proponent of insurance. And I would say, especially for young people, how do you get, well, two things. For young people, how do you get them to have that mind shift of, yes, I need to, plan for the future. The other thing, and you may have spoken about this, and I might have missed it, but for insurance owners who don't have, like I'm starting, an entrepreneurial business in helping organizations improve their culture, et cetera, their workplaces. So if you don't have a physical building, I work from home in that context, and I already have home insurance. Are there other insurances that businesses can consider, like just small businesses just starting out, or other things they could consider? And that you might have already said, but I apologize if I missed that.
Okay, for your first point, I think going into the schools, we have to continue to do that, because the high schools especially invites the insurance industry to come to their career day. And so we are doing that, but we need to do more, not just wait for career day. And so we have, as an insurance industry, we also have an education leg, which is called Insurance Institute of Belize. And we were, before the pandemic, more active and, getting into the schools, talking to the students. So you get people from a very young age to understand what insurance is all about and why it is important. Now, for a virtual company, I think since the pandemic, that has been something new. So insurance has to start to evolve to offer insurance on that. But you don't have a physical building, but you still have your like maybe the business interruption, you have your computer, you have your other stuff that you need, which would be your contents. So you can insure those. And if you're working on your own or if you have employees, then also your employee's liability. So you can still have those standard policies. You don't need to have the building, but you do have other stuff. So you can.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's very, very, very interesting hearing about this.
Okay.
Thank you for that question, Robin. Go ahead, Elisa.
Well, I don't have a lot to add, but I would love to have a house in the Caribbean or Belize. We got it. My husband and I got engaged in Nassau, actually, and then we spent some time. We wanted to get a place in Belize actually before we had kids, but maybe someday. But I think it's important to educate kids early. I totally agree with that. I had listened to a talk recently, and I can't remember where it was, and I want to implement this model myself. But with allowance in kids, where they said somebody had suggested that they have to come up with like a proposal of what their time is worth or what their services are worth, and essentially, bid for the allowance. But then within that, they were also they have to allot for like purchasing of insurance. And they didn't get into exactly like what that would cover. But this brought that back to my mind as something to work on implementing. But I thought it was interesting the way they were, because it would teach them negotiation, insurance, all of those, saving money. And then they had touched on different things that they were supposed to do with the money. But I think it's important to encourage like what insurance means and what it could mean to not have that and how devastating that can be just overall. So thank you for sharing your expertise.
Thank you. And I do agree, because you get the financial planning courses when you go to university, but I think they need to start introducing it earlier, because it's a part of life. And if you learn about it very early, then it becomes a part of your daily work, your daily living. And so getting the children, maybe not the 10-year-olds, but maybe like the 12-year-olds, they will start having that conversation with them as part of the curriculum. That would be excellent.
Yeah, and you were right, Dr. Cass, with the fire, that it's very true how much that, because they even come home with like, my younger one, she's in first grade, and she came home this year with like, we had to draw out how, our exit plan if there was a fire, and all that stuff. So, and then that gets us as parents like rethinking. We'd actually had some fires recently. One was related to the neighbors, and which, like it all kind of tied together with what you were saying about if your neighbors are not safe, then that can affect you as well. But you can be prepared in those situations.
Yeah, I've taught this population for 23 years. So I'm in the classroom 8 hours Saturdays, 8 hours Sundays for 23 years with fire, police, homeland security, and military. So this is ingrained in me. So what I do with my fire chief students is, people are happy to see fire department. They are terrified to see the police department, right? So fire is easier to bring into the community. And we even run CPR training and get everybody certified in the community. Because if we can give CPR and resuscitate people, Elisa, you know this, when they come to the hospital you're at, the chances of survival and the quality of life post-survival geometrically increases. And how you give CPR to a man, woman, and a child are different. And getting people trained, getting people annually certified. American Heart Association works with the fire department, and the fire departments donate their time. I organize the event, and once a month in different communities, we certify people in the Chicago area. So to me, that is also risk mitigation, because that is saving lives. That helps keep the premiums for the life insurance down. It helps everybody overall.
Yeah, because those minutes matter. I mean, and one of the most devastating stories when I was a new nurse and working traumatic brain injury was a guy And this actually, he wasn't traumatic. He was anoxic, which is a lack of oxygen to the brain. But what had happened, he was at a restaurant and he choked on a piece of steak. But instead of staying around where there could have been somebody that could have done the Heimlich maneuver or helped him, he kind of panicked and walked away from people. And I mean, that time, it's like, that's brain cells, that's life. And so, yeah, to start the knowledge early is really important, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Cruz, I see you just joined us from Belize, and I know you're a business owner. You have ideas of expanding your business. What questions or thoughts do you have for Melissa?
Hi, unfortunately, I was a bit busy and joined the conversation late. One of the questions that I am in the financial business, right? And one of the questions would be, what would be the procedures to secure your cash or secure a loan? I provide loan. What would be the procedures for probably have life insurance for the borrower, and what would be the procedure to ensure the cash that I might have in my possession or something like that, no? That's basically the question.
Cruz is in the microcredit business, Melissa.
Right.
So the people who banks won't consider because they haven't built their credit up, they're not at a level. So Cruz helps them get on their feet, get their business started. And then once they are strong enough and have a credit, then they can go for bigger loans to the financial institutions. But he becomes the starter for people's prosperity.
There is a policy for that. You would have to speak with a life insurance company, because they do it for the banks, so they do it for lenders as well. So whenever somebody is borrowing money from you, you can then add in that insurance to the cost for, to cover if anything happens to them, then the life policy can take over. There's also credit insurance from the general side, but it's not locally bought. It has to be done from outside. But you can also for bad debt. If you're lending and somebody doesn't die or doesn't get sick, but they just don't pay you, there's what they call credit insurance. But that's a more specialized policy, and it is not very cheap, but it is out there as well. So those are
okay. And the question with because I do believe that the banks, insure the cash or something like that, if any loss or
the actual cash that
damage
you
or
have on the
theft.
premises, yes, there's a cash insurance policy for that as well.
Okay.
So does he reach out to somebody like RF&G to have these conversations, Melissa, or is it two different entities? Because RF&G does general.
We have general and we have life, but if he reaches out to me, you can give him my contact details, and then I can point you in the right direction.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So a question comes to my mind, Melissa. We have a huge expat community that comes into Belize, invests in residential property as well as commercial property. Some even start outsourcing businesses, right? And today we live in an age of work from anywhere. One of the things I do is I work for the US from here in the Caribbean, because COVID has given us the gift of that flexibility, right? So when people are thinking of coming here and starting life and investing, is there anything expats, foreigners need to consider other than what we've talked about because they're foreigners?
If they're going to be building they're going to construct their own property from ground up, and they're doing it on the keys. They just have to bear in mind that getting wood insured on the keys is a lot more difficult than having a concrete or a mixed construction. So just check first to make sure, because we have the insurance industry, they have capacities on these areas because they're very high risk exposed areas. So if you're going to build on San Pedro, that's a key, and it's going to be all wood, then you need to just check. And we do have people that call us and say, you know, this is what I'm planning to do. Would you be able to insure it? These are my plans. And then we advise them. So get in touch with the insurance company before, if you're billing something that is not, you know, the standard.
So even before you finalize your construction plan with the architect, make sure what is doable and what is coverable before you take that first few steps.
Definitely.
Excellent advice. And I'm so glad I asked the question, because a lot of people want to come to the Caribbean for the water,
Yeah.
but they don't understand with that comes all the risk.
Yes.
I grew up in Sri Lanka. We had the tsunami. I am like, oh Lord, everybody asked me, you're in the Caribbean from Chicago. Why are you up in the mountains? And I tell them I'd rather go to the water than the water come to me when I'm asleep, because I don't want that. Right? Been there, done that, got the t-shirts, don't want it. And I'm an island girl. And I know while the island life looks nice on TV, it comes with a huge burden. Everything corrodes faster. Everything breaks down faster. And water gets to you at the most unexpected moment.
Right.
Is it worth the risk? So I love all the insights you've shared, Melissa, as we bring this conversation to a close. I will make sure everybody continues to have your contact information, because I've provided your LinkedIn link in all the promotions so that people can reach out to you, and through you, they can reach out to RFNG. Is there anything you want to say in closing, and any other way you would prefer for our audience to get in touch with you?
Well, I would just like to express my thanks for having me on the show. It's always good. I always like to have the opportunity to you know, share the knowledge, because when people know, they can make better decisions. And it's just to make sure that people that watch this show understand that you need to plan before you execute, and things will be a lot easier.
I love that.
LinkedIn is fine, so they can get in touch with me through that.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I love your closing thoughts, because planning is everything. I always tell my students and my clients, your failure to plan is your plan to fail.
Yeah.
So if you don't want a plan to fail, then turn around and have a plan that is going to make sure that you're sustainable and you're viable. So with that exceptionally insightful nugget of wisdom, we bring this conversation to a close. And to all our Goldilocks community members, and Melissa, you're officially inducted into the community of getting it just right, because you just shared with us how to get our life's risks addressed just right. So as you go about your day-to-day life, and as you go about having your day-to-day conversations in your communities, think about how you can take this knowledge and share to make your family, your community, your country, your society safer and stronger. Because every human interaction is our opportunity for transformation. And today, Melissa, with great gratitude to you, we have been transformed, and we have been given the opportunity to take this transformation and pass it on to others who didn't have the opportunity to be there. Thank you.
Thank you.